Hi there, this is Ryan Eckert with Peak Endurance Solutions. Thank you for purchasing a triathlon specific training plan from me through the Training Peaks training plan store. The point of this video is just to introduce you to the training plan that you've purchased, as well as give you a brief overview of some of the items and materials that you have received in this training plan. So I've tried to design this training plan that, while it is a training plan that is set in stone, so to speak, there is some built-in flexibility and customizability in the plan that allows each individual athlete that purchased the plan to move things around and customize things as needed to some degree. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm using the advanced 20-week Olympic distance triathlon training plan. Just know that regardless of which level plan you have, whether it's a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and regardless of which distance plan you have, they're all set up very, very similarly. The major differences between beginner plans and intermediate and advanced plans is that beginner training plans, you won't see these initial testing sessions in the first week, nor will you see testing sessions throughout the entire plan. And the majority of beginner plans, all of the intensity within each training session is prescribed based on perceived exertion, whereas in the intermediate and advanced plans, it's a combination of pace and power across the bike and the run, and then perceived exertion on the swim. So those are some of the major differences between the plans. You'll notice that when you purchase your plan and you apply it to your Training Peaks calendar, the very last day, so whatever week, whatever the length of the plan is set to, so in this case it's 20 weeks, the very last day on Sunday of week 20 or 24 or 16, whatever the last week of your plan is going to be your event that you bought the plan for. If you have a race that takes place on a Saturday, I believe I explained this a little bit in an instruction booklet that I give you as well that I'll show you here in a second. I explained this, I think, in a little bit more detail within there. But if you have a race that occurs on a Saturday or even another non-typical day of the week, I know some races can even take place on like Fridays or Mondays or random days during the week. But for the most part, the average date of a race, triathlon, running race, most endurance style races, is on Sunday. So I set these plans up so that the races are planned on a Sunday at the end of the plan. However, if your race ends up on a Saturday or another day of the week, I would still apply the plan starting on a Monday, because all of these plans are designed to flow from a Monday through Sunday. And then if you were to apply this with the plan ending on a Saturday, it's going to move all of these sessions back one day, and it's going to be a nightmare trying to move all the sessions forward one day. What I would recommend you do is set it up so that the plan is applied where this event card is on a Sunday, and then if your race is on Saturday, simply move the event card to that Saturday to line up with it, or forward to the following Monday to line up with it, whatever day of the week it happens to fall on, and then use your best judgment to decide which session you want to get rid of or how you want to move around this week leading into the race. For example, if this race was on a Saturday, you could move this race to Saturday and then just move this run to be on Friday with the swim. You could also get rid of this rest day and move all of these sessions forward a day or backwards one day, if that's something that you prefer. So there is some flexibility there for you to move things around as needed if your race doesn't fall on the exact Sunday at the last week of the plan. So with that said, now we'll go back to week one, and I'll just give you a brief overview of what you get initially. So you get obviously everything that's in this plan. On day one, though, I have every single day one of all of my training plans a complete rest day, and I scheduled it to be a rest day on purpose. Your training essentially begins on day one, but rather than it being an activity or a physical activity, I want you to hopefully try and get through this introduction card. So within this introduction card, there's going to be a file for the video that you're watching right now. And then the other file is going to be this instruction booklet. So each training plan has a sport-specific instruction booklet. And I update these fairly regularly. So depending on how close to when I last updated these, you'll see that this updated date may be a little bit closer, a little bit further away to the date of when you actually purchased the plan. But I try and keep this up to date every couple of years because usually Training Peaks will come out with slight tweaks and updates to the functionality and the features that it offers. And sometimes it can make these videos as well as some of my instructions a little bit outdated. So when some of those things kind of stack up over a year or two, I'll then go through and update all of my training plans with new instruction booklets and new videos. But this should be up to date as of March 2026. So what you'll notice in this introduction card is just a little bit of text that's basically saying, review this video as well as read this instruction booklet. If you have an intermediate or an advanced plan, it tells you to get your resting heart rate the following day in the morning. If you track your data and you know what your resting heart rate is with like a smartwatch, or you just know it through another method, a reset resting heart rate I should add, then you don't necessarily have to do this, but you'll need your resting heart rate to help establish some training zones. So that's why this is relevant to only intermediate and advanced plans. For beginner plans, there are no training zones that are established, as everything is based off of perceived exertion. So once you're done with this video, the next thing you're going to want to do is open up this instruction booklet. So if you click on it, it should download and a PDF file should open. So when you go into this PDF, you'll see that there's a title page. There is a table of contents giving you a layout of all the sections that are included within the plan. And then you'll eventually run into all the different sections. So a brief intro, training plan layout and content. This is an especially useful section if you're brand new to Training Peaks. If you have used Training Peaks, you can maybe skim through some of this. There is going to be a section next on partners and sponsors that we work with. So there's a little bit of info in here to get you some discounts on some of the partners and sponsors that we work with. Goal setting, this is a section that just goes over how to set certain types of goals and what different types of goals are, and this can be relevant and important if you have specific goals that you're trying to achieve with your target event. The next couple sections are probably the most important to read thoroughly. So endurance training overview and terminology. So every coach uses slightly different terminology. I try to use the most universal type of terms that the vast majority of coaches would use. So I try not to have any unique phrases or terms that are specific to me and my coaching style. I try and use very broad and applicable terms. But some of these things, there's a lot of different ways that coaches can prescribe intensity and describe different types of sessions. So again, I try and keep it relatively general and broad. So hopefully if you've worked with coaches before or done other training plans, some of this stuff looks very familiar, but there may be subtle differences in the way that, for example, I use a rating of perceived exertion chart and what my specific numbers mean. So just make sure you read through this, as this is very important in making sure you interpret all of the training sessions that you do throughout the plan correctly. So you'll see I go over rating of perceived exertion and how I use it. Training zones, so then I give you a chart that describes which training zones. I use like a classic 5-zone training model. Again, coaches will sometimes use a 3-zone training model. Some use up to 8, especially across bike and run. But I typically lean towards a zone 5 or a 5-zone training model. So this will go over what different rating of perceived exertions, heart rates, swim paces, run paces, cycling power, so on and so forth mean, and what type of training effort it's referring to. So this is important as well, just to give you an idea of what different training zones mean and what those are referring to. I introduce a concept of polarized training here, which is basically just a concept related to keeping easy sessions easy and hard sessions hard. But there's a little bit of information here, and I link in a video describing this in detail. This is kind of a fundamental underpinning of all of my training plans. Not so much that I necessarily call the approach that I do polarized training. And if you know what polarized training is, you know it's a kind of a particular way of prescribing training intensity. But in general, all of my plans follow a somewhat polarized approach in that I encourage all athletes to keep their easy and aerobic sessions truly easy and aerobic, whether that's with perceived exertion, heart rate, pace, power, whatever mode of measuring intensity that you're using. and keep the hard sessions hard. So the goal essentially is don't make your easy sessions too hard and then be so tired from that that your hard sessions become just kind of hard and not the appropriate level of hard that it's supposed to be. So this gives you more background information on that. And then I refer to what like easy pace refers to, aerobic pace refers to, what tempo and interval paces refer to. Those are essentially the 4 different types of sessions that I prescribe. An easy session, an aerobic session, a tempo session, and an interval session. As you get closer to races, I will prescribe race pace sessions. Those are fairly self-explanatory. It's usually going to be a specific pace that you're trying to target for races. Again, you may mostly see race pace sessions in intermediate and advanced plans, but in beginner plans, I do sometimes sprinkle in some race pace work, race pace efforts towards the end of training plans as you get closer to your goal race. The next section, resistance training session terminology. So this one, Training Peaks has made some updates in the past year or two that have made doing or programming strength training sessions to be done remotely by athletes really, really easy. They didn't used to have some of the features they have now related to strength training, so this section was a lot more important back then. But this section just gives you a brief overview of the importance of strength training. I prescribe strength training at least 1 to 2 times a week in every single plan, and I kind of look at strength training as a non-negotiable. In other words, every athlete should be strength training at least 1 day a week and hitting all of the major muscle groups of the body every week throughout the year. Sometimes twice a week throughout the year, depending on which phase you're in of your training. But strength training is absolutely and incredibly important, not only for injury prevention, which is what most athletes may kind of relate strength training to nowadays, but certain types of strength training can actually improve endurance performance, especially on the bike and the run, but it can translate over to the swim as well. So it's really important for a variety of different reasons. I give a little bit deeper discussion on the science of strength training. On my website, I have a blog essentially in which I publish what I call science posts, or posts that are kind of diving into the science of different topics related to endurance sport. So if you are curious as to some of the specific ways in which strength training is helpful for endurance athletes, this link will give you some more information. But otherwise, strength training sessions, as you'll see here in a second, are relatively straightforward and easy to follow along to, even if you're doing them by yourself from a distance to your coach. I have a section that's dedicated to maximizing recovery, so this kind of will just talk about some of the main things that influences recovery between sessions, after races. Basic sports nutrition. Again, I'm not a registered dietitian and I'm not trying to pretend to be one. What falls within my scope of practice as a strength and conditioning professional and coach is giving basic nutrition guidelines. And so basically this section covers some general nutrition recommendations to ensure that you're fueling appropriately throughout the day so that your performance, energy levels, and recovery is hopefully maximized. And then there's a section on preparing for race day. So this is kind of the mental approach to getting ready for a race, as well as what the taper is, what's the purpose and what it does for you. So this is a good section to read through as you get closer to a race especially. I give a link again that goes over the science of tapering in a little bit more detail if you're curious. And then I just conclude at the very end with some contact information and a good luck message. So I do have an email that you can reach me. It's peakenduranceSolutions@outlook.com. If you have any questions on the training plan or on any of the content within it, always feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions or if you're curious about certain topics within the training plan or within this document, there's a pretty strong chance that I have written about that concept or topic in more detail on my blog, on my website. So it's called the VO2 Max Forum. It's more or less of a blog. It just sounded better to title it VO2 Max Forum than VO2 Max Blog. So if you click on this, it'll actually take you to my website, which I'll go back out and show you my website. And it will take you to this page. I have an education tab on my coaching page or my coaching website, and it is underneath this educational forums tab. And if you go there, There is basically one group at the moment. It's just my VO2 Max Forum group. If you click on this, you can join it, and then you'll get updates if you want to turn on like email notifications or whatnot when I post more. I'm not quite as active in this as I used to be, but it is something that I am planning on becoming more active in moving forward. But there's a ton of posts in here, and they dive into a variety of different topics related to various things within the endurance sport realm. Yeah, so chances are there is something in here that I've written on if it's a topic that you're interested in. So you can use the search function. You can type in keywords of maybe you want to learn more about what threshold means and what it is. Here you go. I have a couple things. What is functional threshold power? Determining functional threshold power, which type, various different things that are related to threshold. So this is a super useful resource. I usually recommend this for anyone that I'm coaching or any athlete that is doing a training plan of mine. My background is in exercise science, and I really like reading research papers and digging into the science. So this is kind of my way of reading some research papers, understanding topics a little bit more, and then writing about it so that other people can learn about those topics as well. All right, so getting back to the training plan. So really quickly, just to go over this training plan, you'll notice that each week you're going to see in a triathlon-specific training plan either a swim, bike, run, or strength training session. You'll also notice that the sessions, the title of the session has in front of it an A, a B, or a C. The way that you use that is, or the way that you want to interpret that, I should say, is not so much that A sessions are more important than B sessions and B sessions are more important than C sessions, but use the A, B, and C denomination to decide which workouts you should cut or alter first. So this is where some of the customizability of this plan comes into play. So let's say you're having a particularly, let's say you get done with week 1 and you have a particularly busy week during week 2. Maybe there's some travel or vacation that is in week 2. Since I'm not coaching you individually, I can't be there to modify things on the go for you. But this gives you a little bit better sense of which sessions you can get rid of or reduce in their total length first. So think of the C sessions as still, every session is still important because every single session supports your overall goal of getting to your key event in the best shape possible. But the C sessions are the ones that if you had to cut sessions and you absolutely had to do it, those would be the ones to cut first or to modify and shorten first. If you do that and then you still need to modify or get rid of sessions, the B sessions you could do next. You could either get rid of them or shorten them. A sessions are the ones that I would try and get done no matter what, unless it just absolutely was impossible to do so, like if you're sick or if you just are traveling and you cannot exercise, depending on what your schedule is like. Then obviously you might have to miss some. But try and get the A sessions in no matter what. Try and get the B and C sessions in as well. But if you have to remove sessions because of your schedule, time issues, or even if you just are feeling particularly run down or tired and you feel like you really need a day off or to miss a session in a week or something, those are the sessions to address first. So you'll see most of the sessions are A sessions, and then there's usually 1 or 2 B sessions and 1 or 2 C sessions each week. I've labeled all of the strength training sessions as B sessions, and basically I've done this because if you had to miss strength training for a week, it's not the end of the world, so I don't want to label them as A sessions. But them being B sessions, really try and get them in. Usually there's only 1 strength training session for most triathlon training plans because they're so heavy with swim, bike, and run. So you really only get 1 each week to do. Other training plans have 2 for a lot of the training plan length. So that's what you'll see each week. You'll notice in the very beginning and sprinkled throughout for intermediate and advanced plans, there are some threshold testing sessions. These are used to determine your training zones and to set those training zones up in training peaks, which is the most important place to make sure they're set up, as that will make sure that all of your sessions are then prescribed based on the correct threshold for yourself, and then you'll get the correct training zones within each session. So when you do your first threshold test, you'll see that I have attached a training zones Excel spreadsheet. This can be useful for putting all of your training zones in one place to look at on just a table in an Excel file. But you'll see down here at the bottom at the end of the test, I give you information on how to set up your training zones and thresholds and training peaks. This is where you want to make sure you do it, just so that future sessions in the following weeks are prescribed correctly. Otherwise, you're going to see pace zones and power zones that potentially don't match your current fitness level. And then you'll see these strength or these testing sessions in the intermediate and advanced plans. Sometimes every 6 to 10 weeks, you'll repeat them just to update your training zones as your fitness hopefully improves over the course of the training plan. And then that is kind of what you'll see each week. Sometimes I'll put notes in here if it's something that there's particularly important or relevant that week. So like this one, I go over how to set up and use your training zones now that all the sessions are going to start being prescribed based on your updated threshold and training zones. Sometimes I'll put in notes related to your first recovery week and what that means and what the purpose of recovery weeks are. And then if you keep going throughout the plan, usually I'll leave a couple final notes once you get to your taper and race week. So I'll leave a note in here relating to the taper and then a note in here relating to race week. So some of these note cards just have some important reminders or small pieces of information that are relevant to the week that you're at in the training plan. All right, so with all that said, that has hopefully given you a good overview of this Training Peaks training plan that you have purchased and some of the contents within it and how to use it and navigate the training plan. But like I said, if you have any questions whatsoever at the end of that instruction booklet, there is my email as well as a link that'll take you to my website. You can either shoot me an email if you have any questions, or on the home page of my website, there should be down at the very bottom a contact form. So you can always submit your contact info and message through here as well, and that'll go that route straight into my email inbox. So I hope you enjoy this training plan, and good luck with your training. And again, if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to reach out.